They came in unmarked crates, one a year, sometimes two. I never asked what was in them. That was the arrangement. The Sarenmark Reserve sat on the western face of Threnholm. 3,000 square kilometers of old forest the Avalith High houses had set aside for what they called the discreet resolution of internal matters. Officially, we ran a wildlife preserve and a small breeding program for the Saurithi, the six-limbed apex predators native to this moon. Unofficially, when a noble house had something it needed to lose without paperwork, a crate came down from orbit on a quiet drop shuttle, landed in the eastern marshalling yard, and was wheeled by my crew into the holding tunnel that fed the predator pen. We did not open the crates. We logged the pickup, signed the orbital release, and sealed our radios for 48 hours. I had worked the reserve for 19 years. My father had run it before me. He used to say a warden's job was to know which questions to ask and which to swallow. I swallowed plenty. I was paid well for it. Most of the men in my crew had families on the colony grid, and the houses paid them in scrip the company store honored at 3 times the normal rate. We took the work. We did not pretend it was clean. The breeding program was real. I cared about it. The Saurithi had been hunted down to a few dozen breeding pairs before the moon went under house management, and we had brought their numbers back to nearly 1,000 in the last 12 years. The pen that fed off the eastern marshalling yard held 4 young, a cohort I had pulled from their mother's range that spring because the mother had been killed by poachers, and the cubs were not yet old enough to coordinate a hunt on their own. They were 8 months old, fast, strong, ravenous. Their lead cub, I had marked her in my private notebook, as Blackear was already showing the wide stance and the slow head turns of a future alpha. That cohort was meant for release training. I had a 6-month plan to teach them group hunting using staged prey, first crippled grazers, then healthy ones, then larger game. The house's disposal arrangement was supposed to use only the older release pens, where adult solitary predators lived outside the breeding line. But the day the unmarked crate came down for House Corenstrel, my senior handler told me the orbital had logged the destination as the 4-cub pen. I asked him to check it. He checked it. The order stood. I did not argue. I had argued twice in 19 years, and both times the houses had reminded me that the reserve's charter was a privilege, not a right, and that the warden of the reserve was an employee, not a peer. I did not argue, but I went to my desk and signed the radio seal myself, and I did not sleep that night. For 48 hours, the eastern monitoring station was supposed to stay dark. The cameras stayed off. The motion sensors stayed off. No one was allowed to look. At hour 52, I cleared the seal and walked out to the cub pen to confirm the matter was concluded, and to log the bones for the crew's burial detail. That is the part of the story I want to get right, because I keep wanting to say I knew, going in, that something was off. I did not. I went out expecting to log what I had logged 11 times before. I was wrong. The pen sat at the head of a long wooded draw, fenced in a low electric line meant to keep the cubs in but not to keep them from learning to range. The crate feed door was at the back of the pen, set into a granite ridge. The crate had been unloaded. I could see it in the marshalling slot, splintered, the lid pried up from inside, which stopped me before I crossed the gate. Bodies do not pry up crates. I stood at the gate and looked. She was in the middle of the pen, sitting on the long flat stone the cubs liked to sun on, her back against the rock face. She wore what had been a court underdress, pale gold, the fabric ruined now, sleeves torn off and used as bandages on her right thigh and her left forearm. Her hair was very dark, the indigo that looks almost black until the sun catches it, and someone had cut it short at the shoulders, jaggedly, the way you cut hair when you mean it as an insult. Her skin was pale jade green, the soft tint of an Avalith highborn. Her left eye was half closed under a clean scar that ran from temple to cheekbone, fresh, maybe 4 days old, healing well. Her right eye was open and amber, ringed in copper and looking straight at me. The cubs were around her. Blackear was lying with her head on the woman's foot. The other 3 were spread out in the easy half-circle a Sorithi pack takes when it has chosen a center. The young male I had marked as Splittail was eating a wild ground bird, neat tearing, civilized. The smallest cub, a female I had not yet named, was lying on her side cleaning her paws calm. I do not remember what I said. I remember what she said. "Don't open the gate." Her voice was low and steady. Avalith standard, the dialect of the inland houses. No tremor, no plea, just an instruction given by someone who had earned the right to give it. I stopped where I was. "Don't open it," she said again, and Blackear lifted her head a little and looked at me, and the air in the pen changed the way the air on a ridge changes when a wind shifts. "I am a warden. I have worked with these animals all my life. I have never been afraid of a Sorithi the way I was afraid of that one, at that moment, looking at me past her chosen alpha. "I won't," I said. "Are you the warden of this place?" "Yes." "Have you been ordered to finish this?" "No." She seemed to consider that. Her right eye closed slowly and opened again. She moved her foot a little and Blackear stood up, stretched, walked over to the gate and put her shoulder against it from the inside, which was a thing she had never done with me before, and which I understood without having to be told. "My name is Marin Corenstrel Vor," the woman said. "I would like to speak with you, but not through the gate." "There is an observation blind," I said, 15 meters north. The cubs cannot reach it. We can speak there." She nodded once. She put her hand on Blackear's neck, said something in a register I did not catch, 3 soft syllables, a clicking consonant at the end, and Blackear left the gate and came to her. The other 3 rose. The pack and the woman moved together to the north edge of the pen, where a small footbridge crossed the electric line and led to the elevated blind. The cubs did not try to cross the bridge. They sat down at the foot of it, watching me. I went up into the blind. She came up the ramp on her own feet slowly, favoring the right leg. The fabric of the bandage on her thigh had been tied with the tight surgical, not a field medic uses, not a courtier. The bandage on her arm was the same. I noticed it because I noticed everything about her in those first minutes. I am a warden. Noticing is most of the job. She sat on the bench across from mine. Up close, the scar at her temple was a claw strike half-healed. She smelled of pine resin and wood smoke and the iron smell of pack bedding. Her eye held mine. "Water," she said, "if you have it." I had a flask in my belt. I unstoppered it and handed it across. She took it without ceremony, drank a measured swallow, capped it, and set it on the bench beside her. She did not give it back. I did not ask for it. "How long have you been in the pen?" I asked. "Today is the 5th day." I sat with that for a moment. 5 days. 4 young Sorithi, hungry on day 1, no kills on the pen record, and a court woman in a torn underdress. "What did you eat?" "On the 1st day, nothing. On the 2nd, a ground bird I killed with a length of crate strap. On the 3rd, a hill shrew the gray cub caught and gave me a piece of. On the 4th, a yearling vorak we brought down together. Today, the cubs ate the rest of the vorak. I drank from the seep at the back of the pen. I knew the seep. It was good water. "They are 8 months old," I said. "They have never hunted as a pack before." "They are 8 months old," she said. "They have never been taught." I did not know what to say to that, so I said nothing, and she let the silence sit, and after a moment she said, "I was taught when I was 12 by a hunt master named Ervik Sorenthal. He worked for my grandfather's house, and he was old and patient, and he did not care that I was a girl or a 3rd daughter or a high house child. I did 3 hunt years with him when the tradition asked for one, because I liked the work. The wisdom is in his hands, not mine. I have only repeated what he showed me. The pack is not mine. The pack is its own. I have only made the room in which it could become itself." I looked at her. "I have been a warden of this moon for 19 years. I have trained 6 full pack cohorts to release. I have never taught a cohort to hunt together at 8 months. The wisdom is that they need 11 to 12 months, and that mixed clutch cohorts without a dam need 14. I have lost 3 cohorts to starvation in my career, all of them in the 11-month window, because the math of hunger is hard for young predators, and not all of them learn in time. Her cohort had learned in 5 days, 5 days during which they were also expected to eat her. "I have to ask you something," I said. "Ask." "Why are you here?" She did not answer immediately. She looked past me, through the slatted wall of the blind, at the 4 young Sorithi sitting at the foot of the ramp. Her hand was resting on the bench, palm down, and her fingers were trembling very slightly, the only part of her that was. She kept them flat. She would not let me see them shake. "My house decided I was unfit," she said. "I have been declared infertile by 3 doctors of 3 houses after 11 years of medical attempts. My mother spent 2 of those years offering me to alliance marriages, and the contracts kept failing at the heritage assay stage. The 4th year, my younger sister was confirmed fertile and produced an heir. I was, after that, a complication. The Avalith High houses dislike complications. House Corinstral passed a private writ of cessation 6 months ago, which under our law erases a member without inheritance dispute. The writ requires that the cessation take place in a venue outside court jurisdiction, by means not officially recorded. My cousin Vorath Irendon paid your house for the use of this preserve. I was given 6 days to set my affairs. I set them. On the 7th day, I was given a sedative and woke in a crate in the air. The cubs had been hungry for 2 days. She said all this evenly, the way a witness gives testimony in a closed chamber. She did not look at me when she said it. She looked at her pack. "I am sorry," I said, because there was nothing else honest to say. "You did not do it. I made a place where it could be done." She turned her eye back to me at that. "Yes," she said, "you did." We sat for a while. The midday sun came through the slats of the blind in pale columns. Outside, the cubs were doing the slow side-to-side neck rolls Sorithi do when they are content and not yet ready to nap. Their bellies were full for the first time in a week. The lead cub, Blackear, was watching the door of my office across the meadow, which I noted, because Blackear had never paid attention to my office before. The pack had picked up the woman's situational awareness as if it were a smell they could now track. "What happens at the end of the seal?" she asked. "My team comes to the Eastern Station tomorrow at midday. The motion sensors come back online. The cameras come back online. The orbital report is filed, confirming the matter is closed." "What does the report require? Bones or recoverable tissue?" "The house auditor for the contract verifies it in person within 10 days of the seal lifting." "My cousin Vorath." I would not know the name. The auditor is named in the closed file. He arrives with house authority and walks the site. "He will arrive on the 7th day," she said. "He always preferred the round number." She had been counting. Of course she had been counting. "Where can you take me?" she asked. The question was reasonable. It was also a thing I had not thought through, because I had not let myself think through it until she asked. The reserve is a closed system. I cannot fly her off the moon. The shuttle pad is registered to the house liaison's office, and my pilot is paid through the same office. The colony grid has biometric checks at every habitation tier. The settlements on Threnholm's other faces are all on the house ledger one way or another. The only ways off the moon were through the houses, and the houses had decided she did not exist. But there was the reserve itself. "I am the warden of this preserve under a charter signed by the Avalith Consolidated Houses in the year 217 of the Reach Standard," I said slowly. "The charter has 31 articles. Article 14 pertains to the protection of Pakalphas. It was written for Sorithi. It binds the warden to refuse to surrender to any outside party, any creature recognized by the pack as alpha, without the warden's written consent. It binds the houses, who signed the charter, to honor that refusal. The article exists because in the early days of the reserve, hunting nobles tried to take live alphas as trophies, and the breeding program would have collapsed inside 3 generations. The houses agreed to Article 14 because the program could not run without it. They wrote the article carefully. It does not specify species. She was very still. You are saying I am Pack Alpha. I am saying that the pack chose you on the first day, and they chose you in the way I have watched 2 alphas be chosen in 19 years, and any working warden of this preserve would say what I am saying if they were sitting where I am sitting and looking at what I am looking at. She closed her eye for a moment. What does Article 14 do for me, exactly? It gives me legal grounds to refuse Voreth Erenden's auditor when he arrives. It does not get you off the moon, but it gives you a place where the auditor cannot reach you without violating the house's own charter. And the houses, in my experience, do not openly violate their own charter. They do other things. What other things? They send a different auditor, or they wait, or they offer to buy the pack out of the preserve at a price no honest warden refuses, or they replace the warden. Can you be replaced? I can. I would not advise the new warden to take the contract. But a man takes a contract or he doesn't, and the houses know how to make the offer attractive. She thought about this for a long moment. Her shaking hand, the right one, had gone still. She had not noticed when it stopped. I will not ask you to lose your post for me. You did not ask me anything. I told you what Article 14 says. She looked at me then with the eye that worked, and I want to put down what I saw in it because I have been thinking about it ever since. I saw something that was not surprise. I saw recognition. I saw a person who had spent her life being told that the work she loved was unbecoming, and the hunt training was beneath her, and the wisdom she had earned at 12 under an old man with patient hands was the wrong wisdom for the house she had been born into, and who was now sitting in a warden's blind on a forested moon, after 5 days in a pen with 4 young predators, looking at a stranger who had just told her that the law she did not know existed was on her side, because the work she had done was the right work. She did not cry. The amber eye glistened a little, the way an eye does in clear light, but she did not cry. She set her shoulders the way an Avalith woman of rank sets her shoulders when she has decided not to be smaller than she is. Tell me your name, Warden. Karen Vale. Karen Vale, then. I would like to read Article 14 if you have it on file, and I would like to sit in your office for an hour if you will give me that. I have been outdoors for 5 days. Of course. I stood up. She stood up. She put her hand on the rail of the blind for a moment, gathering her balance. The right leg was not strong yet, and then she straightened and did not lean on it. We walked together down the ramp to the cubs. Blackear stood up when she came. The other 3 rose with her. Marin Korenstrelvor stopped at the bottom of the ramp and looked at the lead cub, and the lead cub looked back at her. And after a moment the woman reached out and put 2 fingers under the cub's jaw and turned her head gently to the side, looking at the place behind her ear where the white patch ran. Blackear did not pull away. The woman made a small sound, the same 3-syllable register from before, and the cub leaned her shoulder into the woman's leg, and they walked together to the gate. The gate was on the back side, opposite the marshalling slot, set with a passcode lock I had not opened in 2 years. The pen was a working pen. The cubs were not supposed to leave it. They were not yet release ready. I opened the gate. I will say this plainly, because it is what I did, and I will not hide from it. I opened the gate of the cub pen and let 4 young Sorithi out into the open reserve at the side of a woman whose own court had given her to them as a meal, because the law I had sworn to said the pack came with her now, and because I had been hers too, the moment she said, "Don't open the gate," and meant it. The cubs followed her. They followed her like a line of late autumn wolves following a winter alpha. They followed her across the meadow and onto the path that led to the warden's lodge, and they curled up in the yard when she crossed the threshold, all 4 of them, with Blackear closest to the door. I left the door of the lodge open. I sat in the kitchen at the long pine table and watched her sit by the fire I built up for her, and I watched her drink 3 cups of black field tea, and I watched her hand, which had been trembling, slowly stop trembling. I watched her hair, where it had been jaggedly cut, catch the firelight. I watched her right eye look at the fire and look away from the fire and look at the cubs in the yard and look at me. And I watched her face soften, very slowly, by degrees, until it was the face of a person who had stopped expecting the next sound to be a door opening on something terrible. I made her food she had not asked. I made her the supper a warden makes for a man coming cold from the eastern line: root stew, hard bread, salted butter, a slice of the smoked vorek my crew kept in the lodge cellar. She ate slowly. She ate all of it. She did not thank me for it, which I noted, because the not thanking was the cleanest courtesy she could have given me. She had been thanked for being given food her whole life by people who did not mean it. She did not pretend the meal was anything but a meal. I respected her for that. She did not cry then either. She did not cry, I think, because she had been a choranstrel for 31 years, and the cessation writ had not changed that part of her. But her shoulders came down off her ears for the first time in the hour I had known her, and she said, after the 3rd cup of tea, "Thank you, Karen Vale." "For what?" I said. "For not asking me to be small." I did not answer that. I did not know how to. The next day, my crew came back on duty at the Eastern Station, and the cameras and sensors came back online, and the disposal log auto-filed against the orbital ledger as it always had. The log read: matter concluded, pack at full capacity, no further action required. I left it alone. The 7th day was coming. I had work to do that did not involve the orbital log. I spent the 2nd day at my desk, with the warden's annotated copy of the charter open in front of me, and the disposal contract file, and the reserve's foundational instrument, and the constitution of the Sorithi breeding registry. The registry was the lever. The houses could replace me. They could not undo a log entry to the registry without a multi-system process that would, by the registry's own rules, take 11 months. In 11 months, anything could happen. I knew Article 14 by heart, the way a man knows the lines of a road he has walked every day of his working life. My father had taught it to me when I was 23, sitting at the same desk, drinking the same black tea. He used to say Article 14 was the only honest article in the charter, because it was the only one the houses had not written for themselves. They had agreed to it because the breeding program required it, and they had let the academic body administer the registry because the houses did not trust each other to administer anything jointly. The charter was full of bad ladders, my father said, but Article 14 was the rung that held weight. He had never invoked it. He had taught me how, in case I had to. I logged the case as a Pac Alpha continuity event under Article 14. I cited the chosen Alpha by the only name I had for her at that moment, which was the name she had given me. I logged the date. I logged my witness. I attached the warden's eye account of Pac behavior, which the registry required in Alpha continuity cases, the Pac's posture at the gate, the Alpha's calling register, the cohort's response to the Alpha's verbal commands, the Alpha's demonstrated competence in directing group hunting. I wrote each section twice, the second time slower, the way my father had taught me to write registry filings. I sent the registry the standard form, in triplicate, through the academic body that administered the registry from 2 systems over. I did not tell my crew. I told my senior handler that the pen was closed for breeding program reasons until further notice, and that no one was to approach it without my direct order. He looked at me for a long moment and did not ask why. He had been with me 8 years. He had stopped asking why a long time ago. The 7th day came in the way Threnholme's autumn days always came: early frost on the meadow, the smell of resin sharp, the sun thin and bright over the eastern ridge. I had been up since the 2nd watch. I had drafted my refusal 3 times and burned each draft, and finally settled on a single page of plain text in my warden's hand, on charter stationery, citing Article 14 and giving notice that the Sarenmark Reserve was, as of 0 local on the 7th day, closed to all outside parties pending verification of Pac Alpha continuity. I had registered the notice with the registry's case file. The notice was the lever sitting in the open. I wanted it visible. Marin Korenstrelvor was at the kitchen table when I came in from the morning's last walk. She was wearing one of my old field shirts and a pair of canvas trousers we had cinched in at the waist, and her hair was wet from the basin. The scar at her temple was less angry. She had slept 3 nights now in the small room that had been my mother's, with the door open so she could see the yard. The cubs slept in the yard. They did not seem to want to be far from her, even at night, even in the cold. She had read the charter, all 31 articles twice, in the warden's annotated copy, and the breeding registry constitution, and the reserve's foundational instrument. She had also read every disposal file the houses had logged in the eastern slot for the last 19 years, 11 files, which I had not asked her to do, and which she did anyway, because she was the kind of person who, when she had decided a thing was worth knowing, learned it down to the surface of its skin. "Vorath is on the eastern road," she said, looking past me at the window. "I saw the dust line 10 minutes ago. He is on time. He always is." She put down the cup of tea she had been drinking and stood up. She had been sleeping. She had been eating. The leg was stronger. She moved across the kitchen now without leaning on anything, and she stopped at the door of the lodge and stood there looking out, and I came up behind her and looked too. The Avileth house car was a long, low thing with a polished green hood and 3 crested flag pennants, Korenstrel red and gold, and the white-bordered black of the auditor's office. It had 4 wheels and made no sound coming up the gravel road. The driver was a Korenstrel guardsman in dress arms. The man in the back was Vorath Irendin. He was thin, fair, and had the high carriage of an Avileth man who had never been told no in any meaningful way. He was perhaps 35. He wore the dark coat of the auditor's office and a silver chain across his chest. He stepped out of the car at the foot of the lodge path with the languid politeness of a man visiting his own property. He looked at the open lodge door. He looked at the 4 young Sorithi sitting in the yard. He looked at me. He did not look at her. He had not yet seen her because she was in the shadow of the doorway and his eyes had not adjusted. I want to be clear about that. He had come expecting bones. "Warden Vale," he said, "good morning. I am here for the 7-day verification on the Korenstrel disposal." "Auditor Irendin," I said, "good morning. The reserve is closed to outside parties as of 0 local. I have logged the closure with the breeding registry. Citation in hand if you would like to read it." I held out the page. He took it. He read it. His face did not move much. "Article 14, he said. "I am familiar with the article." "Then you are familiar with my authority to invoke it." He looked at the 4 young Sorithi in the yard. He looked at the lodge door. His eyes had adjusted by now. He looked at her. She stepped out of the shadow and onto the porch and stopped at the rail, and she looked at him without saying anything. Her hand was on the porch rail, steady. The amber eye held him. The scarred eye, half closed in the morning sun, did not soften the look. I have not been an Avileth in any of my 19 years here. I have only watched them, but I have watched them carefully. I have seen what they do with their faces when a thing they did not expect arrives in front of them. I have seen the small tightenings at the corners of the mouth that mean recalibration, and the small, slow lift of the chin that means the man in front of them is reorganizing his social ledger. I saw Vorath Irendin do both of those things in the second he saw his cousin alive, in a borrowed shirt, on a warden's porch, with 4 Sorithi in the yard between him and her. He recovered well, I will give him that. "Cousin," he said. "Auditor," she said. "This is irregular." "It is." "The writ has been answered. The pack accepts me. The warden has invoked Article 14. The breeding registry has been notified. The 7-day window will close in. She glanced at the wall clock through the open door, 3 hours and 40 minutes, at which point the writ's enforceability lapses. I would ask, cousin, that you do not embarrass the house further by attempting to act on a writ whose conditions have expired. She said all of it without raising her voice. The amber eye held him. He did not look at me, he looked at her, he looked at the cubs. The pack accepts you, he repeated. It does. And you propose to remain at the reserve. I propose to remain Pack Alpha until the registry determines otherwise. On what terms? On the warden's. That was the moment he turned his head and looked at me. The look was longer than the polite glance he had given me when he stepped out of the car. He was taking the measure of me. I let him take it. I had been measured by Avalith High House men before. I knew what they were looking for. They were looking for the fear, the calculation of what could be paid or threatened. I gave him my warden's face, which is the face I use when I am telling a poacher he will not be allowed to hunt on the reserve no matter what his title is. It is not a hostile face. It is not an angry face. It is the face of a man whose ground has been the same ground for a long time, and who has stopped being surprised by other men's confidence on it. He looked back at her. You understand, he said quietly, that the house will not retain you. I do not require retention by the house. You understand the writ erases inheritance. I have no inheritance. You understand. Cousin, she said, you have done your job. The reserve is closed. Drive back to the orbital and tell my mother her writ is answered. The cessation has taken place. I am no longer of the house. There is no Marin Corenstrel Vor. There is only the Pack Alpha of the Sarenmark Sorithi cohort and the warden who recognized her. You may file that if you require something to file. The breeding registry has the case number. He looked at her for a long beat. He looked at the cubs again. Blackear was watching him steadily, head low, the slow neck roll she did when she was thinking about whether a thing was prey. He turned. He walked back to the car. He did not look at me. He did not say anything to the driver. The driver shut the door behind him. The car turned slowly on the gravel and drove back down the eastern road, the dust line trailing it back into the trees. I do not know what he told her mother, who was an aunt of mine in the courtly tangle of the houses, but only in the way that distant people can be when he reached the orbital. I do not know what was said in the upper chambers of House Corenstrel that night, or the next week, or in the months that followed. I know the breeding registry sent a representative 6 weeks later, an academic in field boots with a recording device and a long list of questions, and she observed the pack and the Pack Alpha for 4 days and went home and filed a report that recognized the case as legitimate under Article 14. I know the auditor's office sent a second auditor in the spring, who arrived politely and left politely without entering the yard. I know I was not replaced. That was almost a year ago. Marin walks the reserve now. The pack walks with her. They are no longer cubs. Blackear is the alpha of the pack under her, and the smallest female, whom Marin named Sareni on the 3rd week, is the lead scout. The pack hunts well. They hunt better than any cohort I have ever raised. They will be released into the wild range next spring, when they are old enough, and Marin will go with them part of the way, and then they will go on without her, because that is what they were always supposed to do, and she will come back to the lodge and we will sit at the long pine table and drink Blackfield tea, and the next cohort will come up under us, and she will teach them, and I will give her the room to do it. She has not been back to the Avalith court. She does not want to be. The breeding registry granted her a permanent academic affiliation last winter. They have a tradition of naming a field associate to each long-running preserve, and her name went on the Sarenmark plaque next to mine, which is the only public record that she exists at all, and is the only record she has ever asked for. We do not speak of marriage. We have not. The Avalith High houses use the word like a weapon, and she has been used by it enough. We do not need it. I built her a small room next to the lodge with its own door and its own hearth, because that was what she asked for and what she should have. She comes through the connecting hall on cold nights and sits at my fire, and we talk about the pack, or about the breeding line, or about old Ervik Sorenthal and the patient hands that taught her. Sometimes we do not talk. The cubs sleep between our feet. The fire burns down. She goes back to her own door and her own hearth, and I bank the fire, and the lodge is quiet. I asked her once in the second month what she would want me to say if anyone ever asked me, if a hunt master came down from the registry, or a new auditor, or a younger warden, about what she was to me and what I was to her. She thought about it for a long time. She looked at the fire. The amber eye was bright. She said, "Tell them I am the pack alpha of the Sarenmark cohort, and you are the warden who saw it." That is enough. It was enough. It is enough. The houses thought hungry cubs would break her. Hungry cubs do not break anyone the houses have not already taught to be broken. They taught her hunger. She taught hunger back. She made the pack of the cubs that were meant to be the instrument of her erasure, and she made the warden of the man who was meant to be its witness. She did not ask for either. She was given both, because she was who she was on the day the gate did not need to be opened. There is a thing I think about sometimes. When I am in the blind and watching the pack hunt in the long meadow, with Marin on the ridge above them in her dark coat and her steady stance, and the amber eye watching the line of the drive. I have watched them work 20 times now. The shape of it does not change. Blackear takes the right flank low, Splittail goes wide and turns the herd. The gray cub closes the angle from the trees, and Sarani comes up the seam and drives the kill against the rock face where the meadow narrows. They move like one animal in 4 bodies. Marin does not call to them when the line is set. She only watches. The whistle she would use if she needed it hangs on a leather cord at her throat. She has not had to use it in months. I think about the moment in the pen when she said, "Don't open the gate," and I think about what she meant, and what I heard, and what the cubs heard. She meant, "I am not safe to take out of here because you do not yet know what I am, and you must not act before you know." I heard, "I have not asked for rescue." The cubs heard, "Stay." We all heard the same word. We all chose the same answer. That is the part of the work I tell the new wardens when they come up under me. I do not tell them about the houses. I do not tell them about the disposals or the seals or the eastern slot. I tell them, when a creature in your care speaks to you, listen to what the creature meant. Not what you wanted to hear, not what your contract told you to hear, what the creature meant. Then you will know what to do. I have not opened the eastern marshalling slot in 11 months. The houses have not asked me to. They will, eventually. I will refuse, and they will replace me, or they will not. And either way the pack will hunt the western range next spring with Marin Korenstrelvor walking beside Blackear with her dark hair tied back and her amber eye on the line and the wisdom of old Ervik Sorenthal's hands in her hands. And that will be the thing that endured of all of this. Not me. Not the lodge. Not the charter. Her. And the cubs that were meant to break her, who learned instead from her how to be a pack. I told her this once, in the long quiet after the 3rd cup of tea, on the night the auditor drove away. I said it because I wanted her to hear it from a warden's mouth, in case she ever needed the words later, that what she had done in those 5 days was the cleanest work I had ever seen on this moon, and that I had watched a great many men do a great many kinds of work here, and that nothing I had logged in 19 years came near it. She listened. She did not look at me when I said it. She looked at the fire. After a while she said, "Ervik used to say the wisdom is not in the kill. The wisdom is in the room the kill happens in. If the room is right, the pack will find the kill itself." "You made the room," I said. "I made the room I knew how to make. It is the room he taught me to make. It is not mine. It is yours now." She thought about that. She nodded slowly once. "Yes," she said, "it is mine now." That was the recognition. Not the gate, not the porch, not the charter. Her own voice saying the room she made was hers, the cubs in the yard, the fire low, the warden across the table. I have been a warden for 19 years. I have logged a great many things. I logged that night in my private notebook, in a hand I do not show to my crew, and I keep the notebook in the drawer under the lodge table where my father kept his. I will keep it there, as long as I am the warden of this preserve. And when the next warden comes up, when Blackear's grandchildren run the western range, and Marin's hair has gone the color of pine smoke, and my own hand has stopped being steady on the gate, I will give the notebook to that warden, and I will say, read the entry for the 7th day. Read what was said and what was meant. Read it slowly. Read it twice. Then close the book, and go out to your pack, and listen to what the creature in your care is telling you. That is the work, that is all of it. That is what she taught me.